As we approach the 50th anniversary of the end of the Vietnam War, News Channel 11 is delving into the history of one of the most controversial wars in American history. News Channel 11's Angelie Daniel walks us through the history of the Vietnam War and its lasting impacts.
I sat down with Northeast State history professor Stuart Fry, who has taught courses on the war. He broke down how the U.S. got involved and what led up to the fall of Saigon. The conflict in French-occupied Indochina started long before the Vietnam War. The French colonized Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam for rubber and tea plantations back in 1858. That's when the Cong Viet began uprising. The French were defeated in 1954 and left, but they signed the Paris Peace Agreement, allowing the North Vietnamese to maintain a military presence in South Vietnam.
South Vietnam was essentially created at that point, and they had to almost immediately start building up a defense network, a military.
They needed help, so the Kennedy administration sent special forces to train and multiply the South Vietnamese army. Kennedy was assassinated in 1963, and Johnson took the Oval Office. In August of 1964, Johnson told the nation American ships had been attacked twice near the Gulf of Tonkin.
Johnson went to Congress and received what was called the Tonkin Gulf Resolution, and that allowed him to put U.S. military personnel, active boots on the ground in South Vietnam.
By the mid-60s, there were 650,000 American soldiers in Vietnam. Young men were drafted and sent straight to the battlefield. The war raged on and the casualties grew. The American public was on board with the war effort at first. What happened during the Lunar New Year in early 1968, though, was a turning point for shifting opinions. The Tet Offensive shocked the American people and proved the North Vietnamese were fully capable of conducting military operations there in South Vietnam. Another war, though, was brewing back home inside the United States. There were anti-war protests, sit-ins on college campuses, and celebrities also getting in on the movement, too.
Many people thought of this as an example of American imperialism, that we were going there to colonize South Vietnam. And they thought, well, this is a war that has nothing to do with American political interests. Why are we sending American soldiers over there to die?
In 1969, Richard Nixon took over the White House, and leaders started to see the writing on the wall for the North Vietnamese to win.
He had actually exited. The United States had exited militarily in 1973. The North Vietnamese immediately broke their treaty obligations. They had formally recognized South Vietnam and agreed not to attack. Of course, as soon as we left, they did exactly that. They attacked South Vietnam.
Fresh off Watergate in '74, Nixon had hardly any political pull, and Congress cut off the money. South Vietnam's capital city, Saigon, was captured on April the 30th of 1975.
So there was nothing that we could do, essentially, by 1975 to stop the North Vietnamese, and they just simply rolled through South Vietnam. And the collapse really happened very, very quickly. So quickly that the ability to remove American personnel, civilians, especially a lot of civilian personnel were still in South Vietnam, it was quite difficult.
What happened during the fall of Saigon and during the Vietnam War still shapes American policy overseas, with military leaders asking if there's an exit strategy. And the question also asked, is there something we have now that we didn't have then in Vietnam, in hopes of not repeating a deadly history?
You can watch an extended conversation with Professor Fry tonight on the WJHL Plus app. It airs at 8:30.